In 2019, Rubicon Heritage Services Limited were awarded the contract to undertake archaeological works on the proposed N26 Cloongullaun Bridge realignment scheme, with works being undertaken in 2020. This included the excavation of two sites previously identified by Richard Gillespie, archaeologist for Mayo County Council. All works were managed by Mayo County Council and funded by Transport Infrastructure Ireland. At the eastern end of the scheme, a small site was excavated consisting of 3 pits, one of which contained 2 fills of charcoal-rich soil and burnt but not heat-shattered stone. Radiocarbon dating of material from the central pit showed that this activity took place in the Middle Bronze Age, between 1643 and 1506 BC. This site may represent a short-term pyrolithic or hot stone site, abandoned after only a small number of uses. Analysis of the recovered charcoal identified that 6 different wood species were used as fuel, including hazel, elm, oak, alder, ash and willow, and showed that all parts of the tree were being utilised, from trunk to small branches. More wider pollen studies across County Mayo have demonstrated that woodland tracts, including these species, were present in this region during the Bronze Age. This suggests that wood was being gathered locally for use at this site. Earlier test drenching works identified the location of a burnt mound site at the western end of the scheme in the townland of Pollsharvogue. Topsoil stripping revealed an intact burnt mound sealed within layers of peat, which had protected it from subsequent farming practices. While the mound was preserved at nearly a metre in height, there was no indication of its existence prior to the earlier test drenching. Burnt mounds, or Fullock Fear as they are otherwise known, are one of the most commonly excavated monuments in Ireland. As of March 2018, some 7,900 sites have been recorded in the Irish Sites and Monuments Record. Large numbers of these sites are excavated on infrastructure projects, and linear trends along these schemes can be identified in the distribution map shown below. The sites usually consist of a central pit or trough, surrounded by a mound of charcoal and heat-shattered stone. As stone is heated in the fire and then thrown into the water, it expands and contracts, eventually shattering into a size too small to use. This material is then discarded and forms the surrounding mound, which often slumps across the trough feature after the site falls into disuse. The sites are typically located in wet ground along the margins of wetland, small lakes or turlocks, as well as along the edges of streams and rivers. They see a peak of use in the Bronze Age, although small numbers of sites date to the late Neolithic and Iron Age. The exact function of these sites is still debated, including uses for cooking, bathing, saunas, leatherworking and more, including even the brewing of beer. What is agreed is that stone is heated and then added to water to raise its temperature. The burnt mound material identified at Pollsharvogue measured 11 metres by 9 metres with a depth of 90 centimetres. All layers contained abundant charcoal and heat-shattered sandstone. 2 phases of mound material were identified during excavation, and this was backed up by the radiocarbon dating undertaken during post-excavation analysis. Initial mound material accumulated along the southern and western edges of the mound during the late Bronze Age, with later activity in the Iron Age seeing the mound spread to the north and east. On removal of the mound material, 2 troughs were identified, with mound material having slumped across both after use. Radiocarbon dating has identified that there was 1 trough for each of the 2 phases of mound accumulation. The smaller trough to the south was associated with the initial Bronze Age mound buildup in the south and west, while the larger trough to the north saw use during the later Iron Age phase of activity. The smaller trough, Trough 22, was located under the southern half of the mound, measuring 1.3 metres long, 1 metre wide and 40 centimetres deep. It was lined with brushwood and roundwood, and a stone platform was located at the eastern end. Radiocarbon dating indicates that this trough dated to the late Bronze Age, 1207 to 934 BC. The timber lining consisted of 52 individual wood elements, comprising base and side pieces with corner pegs. On excavation, it became apparent that the stone platform acted as a hearth, with stones heated here and pushed directly into the trough itself, with burnt stone and charcoal mounded in the eastern half of the trough fill, as can be seen in the bottom right section drawing. A dump of charcoal to the west of the trough appeared to be waste material from this hearth activity, as it lay under late Bronze Age mound material. The larger trough, Trough 21, was discovered under the northern edge of the mound. This measured 2.5 metres long, 1.65 metres wide and 40 centimetres deep, able to hold over 3 times the volume of the earlier trough. This larger trough was dated to the Iron Age, 535 to 391 BC. As with Trough 22, this trough was lined with wood, consisting of 46 elements, including plank and roundwood base and sides, and 23 pegs or stakes, with stone also incorporated into the construction. A series of stakes were cut into the peat to the east of the trough. When lifted, one of the base planks had tool marks along its underside, suggesting it was shaped after being split, and one of the western end timbers had 2 notches cut into it. While the purpose of these is unclear, it's possible that they were cut into the timber to rest a rack or frame over the trough. The stakes located around the eastern end of the trough also suggested a temporary lightweight structure. On removal of the base timbers, a layer of moss was discovered underneath, which the base had been laid onto. This construction method has been noted elsewhere, such as at Fourleans 1 and 2, Curragh 4 and Sutton on the nearby N5 Charlestown bypass. Such moss layers are typically interpreted as a coarse filtration layer for the water that would have naturally filled the trough from the surrounding groundwater. A stone path extended into the site from the northwest, terminating at the larger northern trough. This likely provided stable and firm access across the soft peat as Iron Age people came to the burnt mound from their drier habitation site. Once at the site, the mound itself would have provided a stable dry surface to walk across. 24 worked timbers were recovered from the smaller Bronze Age trough. The timbers were in good condition and included 19 chisel ends, 23 wedge ends and 9 pencil ends. 45 worked timbers were lifted and examined from the later Iron Age trough. These included 8 chisel ends, 13 wedge ends and 38 pencil ends. Analysis of the worked timbers from the late Bronze Age and Iron Age showed that the axes used could have felled trees in a single blow. Shallow cutting angles and typically flat facets indicated the use of sharp metal axes. Wood used in the construction of both troughs was dominated by hazel, with lesser quantities of alder and ash. 1 sample of oak and 1 of fruitwood was also recorded from the later Iron Age timbers. Burnt mounds are important sites for environmental analysis and our understanding of how earlier communities managed and exploited their local woodland, which is one of their most important resources. The dominance of hazel with lesser quantities of alder and ash identified in the examination of the timbers is backed up with a charcoal analysis, which showed that these 3 species were the main trees used as fuel wood on site. Pollen study of peat prior to the burnt mound has shown that these species were available locally. The pollen information is also interesting in that it shows a prolonged burning event at the base of the sequence. This indicates that there was another, earlier burnt mound site in use locally as peat began to accumulate, which suggests another mound is located somewhere outside the scheme boundary. Just about all the charcoal identified is branchwood, possibly indicating woodland management, with alder and hazel known to respond well to coppicing. Other evidence of woodland management is shown in the alder heel seen here, and this may explain why there is no woodland management seen in the pollen record. Also of interest here is that although oak is present in the local woodland, signalled in the pollen, it's hardly used as a wood fuel for the burnt mound activity or for construction of the trough timbers. Two sites were excavated as part of the N26 Cloongullaun Bridge Realignment scheme, and both represent the use of hot stone to heat water in the prehistoric period. The site at Cloongullaun 1 was dated to the Middle Bronze Age and saw use for only a short period of time. The site at Pollsharvogue 1 was a multi-phase burnt mound dating to the Late Bronze Age and Iron Age. As the mound would have been visible in the local landscape, it's possible that it was a good indicator of ideal conditions for this type of activity, with the later Iron Age activity located directly adjacent to the earlier Bronze Age mound. The environmental analysis undertaken from these sites gives us important insights into how local communities utilised and managed their local landscape. The identification of the same wood species in the timber and charcoal analysis indicates what species were selected for use at these sites, while the pollen analysis shows what was available. From this, we can infer that certain species, such as oak, were largely ignored for use at Pollsharvogue, possibly reserved for use at other important sites. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, which details the work carried out by Rubicon Heritage on behalf of Mayo County Council.